Welcome to the Broken Metatarsal, where we celebrate everything that noughties football had to offer. My name is Rich Williams, and joining me today, Planet Football editor Mark Holmes.
Howdy.
Just was not expecting that.
Try to be different every week.
That's good. Deputy editor of Planet Football and a man who has now muted the WhatsApp group which deals with organising podcast recordings, Rob Conlon. Don't think we hadn't noticed, mate.
Hello there. Don't worry. I get a notification if I'm being tagged in it, and that's all I need to know.
Does that mean we've technically broken you?
Well, I don't want to say that personally, but my life is much easier now. So.
Without going bing, bing. And our special guest is a comedian who recently summed up what it's like to be a Leeds fan by tweeting, "Anger, tears, frustration, fear, Saturday." Welcome to the angry, teary, frustrated and fearful Micky P Kerr.
Cheers, mate. It applies to Tuesdays as well.
How dare I underplay it so much? How are you, mate? All right, good to have you back on the podcast. Last time we were here, we were chatting about Leeds' run to the Champions League semi-final, but we're non-Leeds related today, mate.
Yeah. Well, slightly Leeds related.
In some ways, yeah. We'll get onto that. But how's things been? All right?
All right, very well. Can't complain. But I'll be honest with you, this season, the 19-20 season, it's killing me off, I think. It's literally finishing me off, and so that I'm a bit, as you can imagine.
We're not in a great place here.
Pour me another drink. I'm only second in the table.
Yeah.
I've been in a relegation battle, lads.
Okay.
There is that.
I mean, someone's going to come to this in about 5 years' time and find this podcast like, when were they talking about? What was going on there? So you've been broken by the season. Rob's been broken by the Broken Metatarsal WhatsApp group. But Mark and I, we're all good to go.
Yeah,
Mark's a Stoke fan. Broken.
But we're actually
Generally
all right at the moment.
broken.
Yeah.
General
Just giving
breakage. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Football Index, the football stock market where you can buy and sell players for real money. Sign up today at footballindex.co.uk and use the code TBMINDEX to trade with a £500 money back guarantee. New customers only, 18 plus, please. Of course, if you want to get in touch with us, it is contact@planetfootball.com. And I've made a total Rick on the first episode back for Series 2 last week by saying, it's almost like I believed what we were saying in the first series, which is that we don't have @Planet Football yet, even though I said tweet us @Planet Football. But we're still @Planet Football.
Football,
exactly.
Yes, football. It's the Portuguese way, isn't that? Is that
We're
right?
cultured.
Yeah.
Because although we've tried our best to get Planet Football off the guy who's got Planet
Twitter
Football.
promised a call.
They promised. Pav got in touch with us on Twitter,
Yeah.
who's been listening to the Broken Metatarsal, saying he thinks he could help us out. But as things still stands, we are still @Planet Football. Correct? Spelt?
Oh, God. Never mention it again, please, Rich. PLANET FUTEBOL. Planet Football.
And of course, that reaction is the exact reason why I mention it every time. Okay, each episode we dig into one element of the noughties, from the sublime to the ridiculous. Today we go from Sheffield to Scarborough, Palace to Plymouth, Queen's Park Rangers to Rotherham, and everywhere in between. It's the manager that managed the most promotions, the referee's touchline tantrumy toddler. It's Neil Warnock and the Battle of Bramall Lane.
Footballers will blame the pitch, the referee, the conditions, the missus, everything but themselves, footballers. And what I try and do is look in the mirror and see if you made a mistake. There's only you knows, but footballers have an easy way of passing the buck, really, if the chairman's fault or somebody else.
You know what Muscat's like? He wants to get a response. I'll tell you something, should I? What? Muscat will not get a booking or a sending off because he's too fucking sly. He does it when nobody's looking. Yeah, he's a shit off, so we don't retaliate with fucking play. He wants somebody to go out there now and elbow him and get sent off. That's all, we don't do that, we just fucking stick in it now. That's a good sign for me, that.
Despite looking like the victim, Paddy Kenny is sent off along with Knowles, Pitt and Muscat.
Fucking hell, what's the difference? Fucking hell, we're away from home, that's the fucking difference. We're in London. That's the fucking difference. Hey, we're in London, aren't we?
Yeah, I fucking die for you lot. Fucking die for you. Fucking hellfire. Look at the fucking games we've tossed away. So I've got to bring the players in now, and I'm gonna fucking do. No reputations, I'm gonna bring the fucking players in. We won't be a fucking soft touch next year. I know that much. Some of you want to fucking look at yourselves tonight. Do you mind fucking going out?
So obviously we're talking about Neil Warnock today, and we'll get on to that in a moment. We've also got, from the Battle of Bramall Lane, an interview with Eddie Wolstenholme, who was the referee who refereed that match. And again, if you're thinking the Battle of Bramall Lane, that rings a bell, we'll get on to that. It is one of the most famous games. It is the only game, we think, up until now that has had to be abandoned due to lack of players during a game. But Mark, you interviewed Eddie Wolstenholme, and that's coming up soon. You interviewed him by yourself, and I must publicly apologise because I got stuck on the motorway, so I couldn't get here in time to do it. But you interviewed Eddie, and what was he like?
I did it all by myself, Rich. Put on my best presenter voice. First thing he said is, "Oh, you've not warmed him up very well."
It's
Hour late.
It's like when you let your kids go off to do something for the film. You have to let go of them and let them flourish on their own.
Well, we'll see. We'll see on the strength of the interview, Rich.
But he was, chatting about the Battle of Bramall Lane and that infamous game.
Yeah, it's good value, really good interview. So, look forward to that later in the show.
Awesome. Also coming up, Football Fact or Football Fiction, where you guys will try and outfox me with a footballing fact, two of which are totally made up and one of which is the truth. Can we, that's you and I listening, work out which the actual one is? So we're talking initially about Neil Warnock. Now, on the last episode, we were talking about shithouses, and our favourite players that were just always in the ref's ear. And you love them if you're on your team, but if you don't, you can't stand them. And we thought we'd kind of like move that into managerial territory. But there have been plenty. It's not just Neil Warnock, but we are focusing on him today.
Yeah, like you say, we were having a chat about it, and obviously we'd done a pod in the first series on Mourinho, who was a manager's shithouse. We did one on Pulis, it was the shithouse in a different way. You had Fergie mind games and all that kind of stuff, but the absolute king of the manager's shithouse is Neil Warnock. And in that montage which we played before, quite a few of those clips are from the documentary when he was at Sheffield United. And the documentary, and this just kind of sums him up. It wasn't about Sheffield United going for the promotion or anything. It was just entitled Warnock. That just sets the tone for it.
If you're going to have a documentary made about you, then I want mine to be called Williams. Otherwise, what's the point?
What's the point? Exactly.
Mickey, when you hear the words Neil Warnock, just what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
That's a good question. Anger, fear, frustration. do you know what's great about the documentary? I've seen it a few years ago. Remember, it was great. But the recent comparisons with Pep, and that's great online. If you've never seen that, check it out. And you've got Pep doing his thing and all cultured and that, and then Warnock just fucking get into him, get it up him. And it's brilliant.
I've noted down a quote from that because it sort of compares Pep, who's saying how the locker room is the nicest place and how inclusive it is. And it cuts to Neil Warnock looking at an injured player during his team talk, and he just says, "Go and get a bath, son. Get out of the way. You'll make me feel sick just looking at you."
Yeah, and he says it in such a calm voice, doesn't he, as well?
And the guy just skulks off. It's like, all right, gaffer.
Oh, God.
But the great thing is that when you think about it, is that how football has changed, and those managers like Pep and that are totally different. But Neil Warnock has just always remained the same throughout. So there's a certain consistency about the Warnockisms,
Yeah, and he's an old school manager, but there's not many of them.
I just love, it's quite a niche that he's got, and I just love his just determination to be Neil Warnock at all times. And the start of that documentary starts from getting off a coach, and he's getting a bit of stick at Millwall, I think, and he's getting booze. And he says, "Thank you very much." It's usually a lot louder than that. And he loves it. He does absolutely love it. And there's a brilliant quote from him about Bristol City, which is one of the many grounds where he always gets slated. And he says, "When I pass away, I don't want clapping or a minute's silence. I want a minute's booing at Bristol City. I don't want silence. I want them all to be chanting, 'Warnock's a wanker,' over and over again for a whole minute. That would be my ideal." And that is him. And you get that as you're watching the documentary. He just does not give a shit what anyone thinks about him. And fair play to him. But there's just some brilliant lines, and I just picked a few out. So it starts in pre-season, and it's like Matlock or somewhere. So he's walking around the stands just talking to fans, and there's a woman there in the stand, and he's talking about the new orange kit, and he says, "You'll be wearing it, you'll be sticking them out like that."
I wish you could see Mark right now.
He's
Who is actually sticking them out right now as he speaks.
Exactly, I've got to do the action. He says, "The fans want black shorts, and I do. We're a better team with black shorts." And it's just like that. Another one, it might be a knob end in the 91st minute that wins it. That's just one of his pep talks. And in the dressing room, Rob picked out a good one about, "I don't like injured lads around the dressing room. I don't want anyone moving when I'm talking." There's a classic when he's shaking everyone's hand before a game, and Chris Morgan says, "I've got shit on my hands, Gaffer." Right, I'll leave that one. It's just, honestly, if you haven't seen it, it's 46 minutes of absolute brilliant stuff. It actually starts, the first game of the season's 0-0 draw against Stoke at home. Then they beat Leeds 2-0. Later when...
he always does that.
Later when Ellen Road...
He always does it,
Later when Ellen Road 4-0. I'm just putting out this mention it.
Unbelievable.
But he has them like running into the sea at Scarborough in the mid-season. He's just, like I say, he's just committed to being Neil Warnock and old school. And one of the clips there about Kevin Muscat, he says, "Paddy has a balloon on his forehead like you've never seen. If someone had butted me like someone's had butted Kenny, I'd chin him." It's just like, that's a manager. In the 2000s.
Is that the scene where there's like a bit of a... It all kicks off at half-time in the tunnel a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And there's that bit, and they go back into the changing room.
That's his response to that.
Yeah.
And this is 2000, this isn't the 80s. This is modern day. Yeah, I'd chin him if someone did that. But what I also love about it is between the games, you see him at home with his wife and kids and stuff. And he's got 2 young kids at the time. He's feeding the ducks. He goes to church, speaking to the vicar. You see him fishing. And he's riding a tractor. Like, fucking, this is brilliant. Neil Warnock is managing the Premier League, and he goes around riding a tractor in his spare time. You just can't write that. What a man.
On that documentary, the Millwall game that you talk about, so I think are they 1-0 down at half time, and it kicks off a little bit in the tunnel, and it is Muscat who's involved in it.
It's always Muscat.
It's always Muscat, because he even says he's a shit house, and that kind of thing. And then there's that clip of him doing that, and then there's a great bit at the end of that game where you saw this bit where they're all walking off because they turned the game round. Sheffield United, they went down to 10 men, but they ended up winning it 2-1. And he comes off, and there's that bit, you know, where players come off and the opposing manager kind of puts their arm around them a little bit and has a little whisper in the ear. And you think, I don't know whether you ever see that, you think they're sort of saying, I always think they're lining them up for a transfer. That's what I always say. They're sort of saying, oh, unlucky, you know, well done, you know, let's have a word in the summer, that kind of thing. He's got his arm around him and he's saying, you fucking deserved that for Muscat. And then the next one comes off and he goes, you deserve to lose that for Muscat. But he looks from the outset, if you can't hear what he's saying, but they've obviously picked up on the microphone.
Hard luck
fella. Better luck. He's actually saying, you deserved it. I just think that's good. Even at the end, they got their heads down. But none of those, they obviously respect him because none of those players sort of nibble back. They're kind of like very forlorn looking and they just walk off going, yeah, we probably did it was our own fault. But
well, perhaps they've just got a degree of professionalism that Warnock doesn't possess.
It could be that. It definitely could be that. But I mean, there are so many stories about him. Have you seen the Graham Poll extract that he did when he was talking about Neil Warnock? This is just like, it's just great. I've got a little bit of it here because it was kind of serialized, I think, from his book. And the first sentence Graham Poll says from this is, the common judgment was that I loved the limelight and sought controversy, but the truth is, whenever I whistled for the start of a game, I hoped it would pass without anything contentious happening. So having heard that line, I don't know whether we can take any of the rest of this seriously, because it is Graham Poll. But there's the 2003 FA Cup semi-final when Sheffield United take on Arsenal at Old Trafford. And this is the one where Graham Poll and Neil Warnock really sort of like, not came to blows physically, but came to blows
clashed,
about it.
so to speak.
Sheffield United lose that game 1-0 in pretty controversial fashion. And he says from the extract, Graham Poll, the afternoon's drama began when I didn't blow for a foul by Arsenal's Sol Campbell and Wayne Allison in the first half. My honest assessment was that the first challenge was a fair one, but later the endless television replays convinced some people that there had been a foul. So he's made a bit of a ricket. Then Allison stays down in the game and nobody kicks the ball out, which is like a ref's, I assume, nightmare.
Yeah.
When you say, just a ref's,
do me a favour.
Kick the ball out. Please kick the ball out.
It's head injury, isn't it? Otherwise, it's play on.
Yeah, but it is. Although that wouldn't have been the rule then, I guess, would it? It would have just been play on head injury or not. I would have guessed back in 2003 that was a kind of newer thing. And then the ball breaks in midfield towards Michael Tong, who kind of like turns round and accidentally he comes together with Graham Poll and they both end up bashing into each other. The ball breaks to an Arsenal player, and within about 30 seconds, Arsenal have gone and scored a goal. The best quote from this is Graham Poll says, Warnock went into a vein-popping, apoplectic frenzy, and I made the mistake of smiling at half-time. Right, so Poll sort of says that one of his sort of defence mechanisms was that he smiled, but there's nothing worse than seeing a referee smiling. No way. It's like, no, what are you doing?
I'm a Warnock on this one, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm already siding with him. Graham Poll, I mean, decent ref, but he's always... Every referee gets wrong decisions against your club, and you kind of hate most refs, don't you?
Yeah.
If a ref's smiling when you know that they've made a mistake, you feel like they're picking on you, don't you? You
Yeah,
feel like
definitely.
it's personal.
I mean, Paul, he's missed the foul. He's then bumped into one of the Sheffield United players. It's ending up in Freddie Lundberg scores the goal. That ends up being the winning goal. They're out the cup in a semi. I mean, a massive game. Sheffield United in a semi-final. And the other in the press conference, Neil Warnock says Paul was their best midfielder in the move for the goal. Paul loved every minute of it. You can just imagine Warnock saying it as well. I don't know why they smile so much. You saw him coming off at half time and at the end, he smiled so much. He obviously enjoyed that performance. You just think, and that's just how he always. Oh, what? Just do more for it. What were you going to say?
Just going to say, make sure you follow it up because the follow up.
Oh yeah, I will do. He says. We worked hard without the help of the ref. We lost in the semi-final of the Worthington Cup at Liverpool when their goalkeeper, Chris Kirkland, should have been sent off. The referee then was Alan Wiley. He was the fourth official here. They loved every minute of it. He says in the press conference after that. And then they lost it. But it goes to show, managers they hold grudges, don't they? Because that was from a game previously where Alan Wiley was in charge. And
we said that with Halsey, didn't we, last week? That teams have favourite refs and least favourite refs, that refs turn up and, for God's sake, we're in for a nightmare. And other times the teams say, we like this one, he's going to be all right with us.
Yeah, actually, interesting you say that, because last night I was watching the Leeds game and it was the Brentford, I was watching it online, Brentford commentators, and they were making a comment about the ref. It's he never gives us anything, this ref. So it's right that you do have, but only it takes one bad decision and you don't forget it.
Yeah. You always think are we just the paranoid ones? But it's nice to know that everyone's paranoid. Everyone hates managers.
They could do loads of great decisions, and even if they get one right that looks like, you still think, it looked like a foul. You know what I mean? You just hate refs, don't you?
The added element with Warnock as well was that isn't he like a qualified referee?
Yeah.
So he always loved sort of going up and correcting him. It's like, no. Look, I'm not just any old manager. Look, I know what you're going through, mate. I know what you're going through, but I'm right and you're wrong, sort of.
But Neil Warnock kind of retorted to what Graham Poll had said in this extract about him by saying, understandably, I was not happy and I told him so. However, in my experience, when I went to see Paul after a game, he was usually so far up his own backside, it was impossible to have any kind of conversation. And you just think the two of them there, those kind of two characters, but Neil Warnock in particular, he's just not interested. If it's not gone, he's the kind of manager, if it's not gone his way, he's not interested. It's the same what you're saying about, if you're injured, I don't want to see you. It's that kind of mentality, isn't it? And that's what he's all about.
But again, I just love that. I love the fact that that's he wasn't a Premier League, a Championship manager. Talk about an FA Cup semi-final, writing in a national newspaper and saying he's up his backside.
Yeah.
I just love that. We don't get that now. We don't get that sort of person.
What Graham Pollard said about him, by the way, you must make it your own mind about Neil Warnock. Some of you might enjoy his nickname, which is an anagram of his real name, which begins with Colin, which we all know what he's talking about. So, there's no love lost there, is there?
I love the fact that he's actually a qualified referee, and yet they absolutely hate him. I'd love to know the things that he said to Paul over the years, just wind him up that much.
It just makes me laugh that I nearly called him Colin then myself, but Rob Warnock sort of doesn't really realise why he doesn't have any mates among referees, and he's just slagging them off constantly. I mean, it's like you said though, he's just so committed to being Neil Warnock. I can't help but respect that. It's like Liam Gallagher's the best person in the world at being Liam Gallagher, or Kanye West is the best person in the world at being Kanye West. Neil Warnock, no one is better at being Neil Warnock than Neil Warnock.
I don't like you, Neil, but goddamn do I respect you.
I wonder what it's like at home. Is when he goes to church, he's have a word with the priest. If he gets fucking great speech. Everyone looking
on the documentaries.
Hey, father, top work.
On the documentary, his wife was saying she just can't, fathom that there's this character at the football, and she referred to him as a character that is also the man she's married to, and who goes out fishing and bobs about on his tractor at home and feeds the ducks with the kids and stuff. So he's obviously just a proper Jekyll and Hyde figure when he gets out there. He's just a complete tosser.
How long do you reckon it takes him to calm down from a game? Do you know what I mean? You can never imagine him calming down. You just see his face as soon as the interview cuts to him, he's just got that look on his face of disgust. It's just the first word is the referee was shit, wasn't it? Kind of thing. And he must just drive home. Maybe he's got his own little tranquil ways of calming down, listens
whale
to
music.
Dolphins or whales.
Just get home to his wife and don't look at me. You'll make me feel sick if you look at me.
Get out the bath. Get out my bath.
You're making me feel sick.
I mean, the thing about him is, and we should say at this point, we're talking about a hugely successful manager, more promotions than any other manager. When Neil Warnock was announced that he was going to be the manager of Leeds United, I was like, okay. but great, we're probably going to get promoted.
We're probably going to get Michael Tong at 55 years old.
but it was a bit sort of like, okay, well, okay, not probably my favourite manager in the world, but on track record, great, we're going to go. It didn't work out that way for Leeds United, but for most of the clubs that he's been at, like hugely successful and a really good manager of getting the best out of his players and his squads and being successful as well.
He does have a really good pedigree, and you can understand why, Leeds fans aside, he is loved, or he was loved when he was there at certain clubs. I mean, I've noted down a quote of his from 2002. He was at Sheffield United. There's an interview with The Guardian, and they asked him, would he ever manage Sheffield Wednesday? And he replied, as long as the whole of my massive salary was paid within 28 days, then I would buy so many toss pots. Although, come to think of it, their current squad would do. And fuck them up so badly. Then I'd retire to Cornwall and spend the rest of my life laughing my head off. And that's kind of why I've got
quote from him.
That's an actual quote.
I feel like that's a quote that if you were said, write a quote from Neil
Warnock,
you'd then write down.
Well, I saw it on Twitter and I was like, that can't be real. And then I Googled it. It's in an interview with The Guardian. And you can imagine as a Sheffield United fan, if you read that, you would absolutely love him.
Yeah.
The problem as a Leeds fan is that he came to Leeds and that's basically what he did.
Yeah.
And he came, rocked up, signed our lads Juve and fucked us up and then went back to Cornwall. And
signed a load of ageing players as well. It just took half that Sheffield United team. You guys could do a job when you're 38, I'm sure, in the Championship.
And also, it did come back to bite him because I think it was after he left Leeds, actually, Sheffield Wednesday did consider appointing him and the fans revolted and basically dragged up this quote and just like, you cannot hire this guy.
There are some things you can't come back from, and a quote like that, you're not going to return back from at all. But like I say, we are talking about him because of his character, but also because of the success that he has had.
The thing with Warnock, you absolutely hate him. Let's not beat around the bush. You hate him when he's not managing your team. But I also love him. We've never had him at Stoke, but if he's winding up the team that I also don't like, it's just absolutely brilliant. Went against the likes of Arsene Wenger, it's just very funny because he riles them up so much and he doesn't give a shit. He really does not care. He will say, that quote to The Guardian is absolutely mental, but it's brilliant. Absolutely love it.
It's easy to forget when you look at him and look at his face because he has. He's got one of those faces that you just want to. You just kind of want to slap him, don't you? He's got a slappable face, and the way he looks, he's a multi-millionaire.
Yeah,
and it's hard to take that in sometimes, isn't it? If you walked into the room now, that man is a multi-millionaire.
He's got a proper souped-up tractor.
Yeah,
leather stitching interior. It's lovely.
He's probably got multiple tractors, hasn't he? He's not bothered.
There's a great story. I don't know which of his players told the story about when they went bowling.
I think it was Pescasolido told it.
Okay.
So he and I just love this again. It's just what a tosser, but
what a Colin.
What a Colin. He's taking the Sheffield United players out bowling. Lads, let's do a bit of team bonding. Let's make it more interesting. Everyone stick a tenner in. So go on then, yeah. Right. When the take's all, they're all ready to play. Neil pulls out his bag, pulls out a pair of bowling shoes, custom ball. Oh Jesus, what's he up to here? Throws a 250 and walks off with everyone's dollar. What an absolute wanker.
So it's a proper good
good bowler. Yeah.
Good bowler.
You can imagine that guy. It's just awful. Imagine taking it really, really
I
seriously.
can't imagine him being a good bowler. I just can't.
I can imagine he's got his own glove or something. It's just a bit
custom
odd.
ball. That is
got his own ball, got his own
extreme.
shoes and all that. He's got these really weird just quirks, and he just lives them though, which again I just can't help but admire. We've chatted about Cornwall, and it became a bit of a running joke at Leeds, how much time he spent there. But I've gone back and I've noticed basically every club he's been in charge of, their first pre-season friendlies every summer are in Cornwall.
Truro.
Yeah, and it's everyone goes for a barbecue on the beach. But I noticed when he got Cardiff promoted, their pre-season prior to trying to prepare for the Premier League, obviously massive underdogs. Start their pre-season, they played Tavistock. They played Taftswell, who I don't know, 3-0. Tavistock 6-0. Bodmin Town 11-1, and it's how has no one? You're in the Premier League, you're awash with all this money. How has no one in charge of Cardiff just gone, Neil, can we just prepare by playing
decent teams?
Yeah, professional outfits. Maybe that would help. I don't know.
Maybe, and as well, you've got to remember, right? It's a massive business. They've got loads of money. They could go abroad and play anywhere. Most teams go and play somewhere luxurious and exotic. I've got a great idea. We're going to go to Cornwall. So, who's Scott? They let a goal in against Bodmin Town.
Yeah.
Bodmin Town. I mean, come on, that's crap.
Come on, though, lads. You can stay at mine, don't worry.
Yeah, what beach like? Oh, it'd be lovely. Take it somewhere really exotic. Cornwall.
And for a manager of such controversy, I guess it was fitting that he would be involved in one of the most controversial games of the noughties, the Battle of Bramall Lane. And if you're wondering, that sounds familiar, but what exactly happened? Let's refresh your memory.
I've been in football now since I was 16. I'm 42 now. I've never seen anything like that.
Misjudgment and a real chance for Dobie, and that's a handball outside the area of which there is no question. And I wonder if a red card is on its way. It is.
There are a few players left on, enough to finish the game.
Santos and Johnson now do collide, and it was a hefty challenge. And I had been telling you about that little running battle that may be in the mind of George Santos, and would you believe it? George Santos has been sent off.
The two players, Santos and Soufo, will no longer play for Sheffield United.
And has the referee sent off Patrick Soufo? It looked as though he's gone as well now. Would you believe it? Two substitutes brought on have just been sent off within, 90 seconds of entering the field.
They're transfer listed.
3 sent off for Sheffield United. Rob Olathorn being carried off. Michael Brown having hobbled off too.
They were being told by certain people to go down, come off. Michael Brown wasn't injured.
But he had a groin in the first half, Michael, and he should have come off at half-time. But because we were losing 1-0, he wanted to come on. And, obviously I don't want to tag it. We had a tough match on Tuesday night as well.
Sheffield United down to 6 players, and the referee, by the letter of the law, forced to abandon the game.
I wouldn't imagine Gary will be having a drink with me tonight now, but not many managers do.
So there you go, the Battle of Bramall Lane, the only game in the history of English football to have been called off because of a lack of players. And right at the centre of it is Neil Warnock, obviously.
Yeah, I love it actually. When you have this perception because it's 20 years on and you just think, of course, Warnock's played for this and he's wanted it called off. Actually, when you watch it back, when I think it's Soufo who gets sent off, Warnock's fuming. He runs onto the pitch and drags him off. It's like, fucking get off. And I saw Michael Brown speaking about it recently, and he said when he went back into the change room, Warnock's pulled him and said, "What the fuck was that?" So he is fuming with what they've all done, and he's seeing it and raging on the sidelines. So it's a little bit different to what you sort of imagine. But yeah, it seemed like he was as angry as anyone, really.
I mean, I guess it's worth just very quickly recapping kind of what happened in the order of that game, which is, Sheffield United against West Brom. I mean, West Brom are going for promotion here. The game doesn't really matter for Sheffield United, doesn't it? They're sort of like in mid-table mediocrity. They're not going down, they're not going up. It's towards the back end of the season. So there's no reason for it to be anything other than just a regular game.
It does maybe slightly matter to Warnock in the fact that it's against his old adversary, Gary Megson.
One of
many, I suspect, yeah. But, I mean, the quote we've got here, the two managers I really dislike are Stan Ternent and Gary Megson. The old saying that I wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire applies, which is pretty, he's not holding back.
Again, this is a real-life manager.
Yeah, a human professional in the industry called football. But the game starts off with Sheffield United's goalie getting sent off in the 9th minute. So they're down to 10 men then. West Brom go 1-0 up. Nothing happens in the game after that, really, until there's 60-odd minutes. West Brom go 2 up. And then Warnock decides to just kind of, I guess, put a bit of impetus in the game by making this double substitution. Santos and Patrick Soufo come on. And then there's this great bit in there with the commentator, where the commentator basically says, talks about the history between Santos and Johnson, who's playing for West Brom at the time, which is, was it the season before? Johnson had kind of elbowed him in the face. He'd ended up with a plate.
It was nasty, yeah. It was really
Santos ends up with a sort of fractured cheekbone or whatever and a plate in there. So the commentator does that classic thing of back in the day where they must have added in the commentary afterwards, say, it'll be interesting to see what the first tackle looks like.
Yeah. Oh, here they are coming together.
As you heard, and then boom, in he goes. And I mean, the tackle is an awful tackle, isn't it?
It's kung fu, isn't it?
Absolutely awful.
When Michael Brown is saying that's a bad tackle, you know it's a bad tackle.
That's the benchmark for knowing, yeah. But it is an awful tackle, and there's no doubt it's a straight red card. Suddenly they're down to 10 men, and then there's this melee which kind of ensues straight afterwards. All the players are involved, but it's Soufo who's right in the centre of there, and he's sent off as well. And within 90 seconds of 2 substitutes coming on for Sheffield United, they've both been sent off, and Sheffield United are down to 8 men. It's unbelievable. They're on. Had Soufo touched the ball?
Probably not.
I'm guessing not. No, like it's proper Sunday league though, isn't it? Because it's just absolute chaos ensues. And you can tell like nobody really knows what they're meant to do. Like, and I think even the fans are just like, what is happening? This isn't meant to happen in professional football.
I never know with that. Like, so he's come steaming in. Awful. I think Michael Brown said, I didn't realise it's such a bad tackle, but surely most people are saying, Jesus Christ, he's nearly cut him in half there. What are the Sheffield United players angry about? Why are they fighting?
Why is he getting involved? Like, it's like, it's weird, isn't it? But I think that, like, you talk about it's not Warnock's fault and he might have been really annoyed. But if you're playing for Warnock, he must wind you up.
I think I agree
He's a
with
very
you on that.
aggressive character. So you can imagine, like, if like Pellegrini was managing really calm, and you wouldn't want to go on there and beat someone up. But if you've got Warnock, fucking get on there, fucking smash it.
Why didn't you stick up for the lads? Why were you watching? Sometimes when you see the players, that you think, why are they getting involved? And you think maybe it's because they're a little bit of fear of, if I'm the one to be seen that's not involved in it, it's not going to reflect very well.
They'd just gone 2-0 down, and Michael Brown says he felt at the time Warnock's put them on to get a reaction, liven the spirits a bit, get them going, and they certainly did that. Fair play.
At that point, they're down to 8. They're down to 8 men. West Brom go 3-0 up, and then there's these 2 injuries. This is the thing that eventually abandons the game. These 2 injuries that come from nowhere. Do you want to pick up on who the injuries are or what?
Yeah. I mean, Michael Brown has said that he'd been tearing into tackles all over the show and couldn't believe that he hadn't got sent off, really. And then he literally drags McInnes, who's at the centre of everything, because it was him who had the headbutt on him from Sufo.
It's him who scored a brilliant second goal, which is amazing.
Belter, Keith Curl had smacked him, and the ref had missed that. And then Michael Brown pulls him down, like in a headlock almost, drags him down by his head, and he's been carrying a hernia injury, and it goes when he does it, and he's like, oh, fuck, I can't go on. And it's brilliant because you see him go over to the ref. He speaks to Neil Warnock on the side first and says, Gaffer, I'm fucked up, what am I going to do? Then he goes over to the ref, and then you just see him walking off like, what the hell's going on here?
And then there's another final nail in the coffin. I'll try it again. And then there's the final nail in the coffin for the Battle of Bramall Lane, which is that Rob Olathorn's hamstring goes 3 minutes after Michael Brown's injury, and then they're down 6 men. If you have less than 7 players, state the rules, you can't play. And suddenly the referee Eddie Wolstenholme, who you'll hear from in just a moment, has no option other than to call the game off with a few minutes to go. West Brom are 3-0 up, and that's it. It's done.
And were the players kind of like, was it verified that they were injured then afterwards, or do you think it is a fake kind of?
Well, yeah, Michael Brown spoken about this and said that the Monday afterwards they went to see like an independent, like not club, like an independent doctor to show that they were genuine injuries. Because obviously the talk was, wait a minute, you're 2-0 or you're 3-0 down here or whatever, you're down to 8 men. They're not really injured. You've been told to come off. That was the sort of talk around it. And certainly straight after the game, when you hear some of Gary Megson's kind of comments and stuff, that is the suggestion. They go to independent doctors and get independently verified that they are genuine injuries. But, who knows?
Weirdly enough, in the year 2000, I was involved in a reverse of this game. We were playing in Pontefract, Sunday League, and we started with 7 men because 2 lads were in the car on the way down. And so because the rules state no less than 7, they actually went, well, do you know what? You can do this. We went, all right. So we started with 7 men. We played 3-3. Right, and I was playing midfield. I played centre midfield, up front, and attack, both wings as well.
Complete forward.
Yeah, they were complete forward and midfielder. But the weird thing is,
worth about 30 mil.
Yeah, the team we were playing still played 4 at the back.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
keep it tight, lads.
We actually we had 2 other lads come on after about 25 minutes, and it was 1-1. And then we had 9. We were literally 1-1. I scored twice. We drew the game 3-3. And by somewhere when we got to 10 men just before half time, and then second half we actually got the 11th came on. It just a bit late. And then I think by the end of the game we even had a substitute and turned up. This is great.
You managed to draw 3-3. There was 7 of you to start with. 11. Were you playing the under 10s team?
I'm not kidding you. While there were 7 players on the pitch from our team, they were playing a 4-4-2. 4-2, right? So they had
Mike Bassett in charge.
It was basically 2 strikers against 3 defenders, which is manageable.
Fullback's not allowed to bomb on.
No, the fullbacks didn't bomb on. That's the thing. I remember looking at them thinking, "What are you doing?" It was a battle in midfield between 3 against 4, which we kind of got on top of them a little bit, And I was a pretty good player. I was playing below my standards. So yeah, we ended up drawing the game 3-3. I think we were 2-1 up at one stage as well. It's incredible. We
threw a lead away.
So yeah, you should easily have got to 3-3.
That's it. There's no excuses.
They weren't really sure what to do. I don't know about your game that you started, but they weren't really sure what to do at the end of this game initially, because what do you do? Do they have to replay it, or is it just abandon? But eventually they just gave the game to West Brom as a 3-0 win, didn't they? Which I guess was the only thing they could do, really.
Well, in a way, that's probably good. It's probably a good thing for Sheffield United, because with still 20 minutes left, if you've got seven men, you're going to get absolutely battered.
Yeah.
Unless they are kind to you, but when there's been a bit of noodling in the game, a bit of needle here and there, then you could lose that 5 or 6-0 quite easily, couldn't you? So they've saved a bit of goal difference. Good decision.
From a game point of view, it's never a great situation for a referee when you're having to send off a goalie like right at the start of a game. It doesn't sort of bode well
for one here today.
Yeah, here we go.
You kind of say early red cards ruin games, but to be fair, the keeper did just lift his arms right up in the air to block a shot while he's outside his area. You can imagine the ref just thinking, "Oh no,
don't do that.
I can't get away with this."
Don't do that.
It must be hard though, because as a goalkeeper, your job's to stop the ball. It's natural. It's just natural to do it, and it's just one of them things like, we should all just go, it's a mistake. Don't worry about it. Here's a yellow. We should have that rule. You're allowed to do it once.
Yeah, just once.
Once in your career. First one.
Do you reckon those two are the quickest sendings off of players? That, I mean, it's even more because it's two of
Vinnie
them.
Jones into 14 seconds.
Is that what it was?
I thought it was a booking, wasn't it? He got booked straight away.
Oh, you might be right. Yeah.
I think it was a booking that was like the whistle blew, and it's about 6 seconds or so. He just slides in. It's a modern day sending off. Yeah, it's a modern day sending off, but it's just a yellow back then.
I once read a story of a player getting sent off after about 5 seconds because the ref blew his whistle to kick the game off, and he went, "Fucking hell, that was loud," and the ref sent him off, sort of swearing at him. But I think that was in America or something like that. That's quite impressive. Yeah.
Harsh.
It does seem a little bit harsh, doesn't it? But I mean, for 2 players to be sent off within 90, the same players within 90 seconds is just. I wonder what it's like to be in the crowd on that day. What people must have been thinking. Like, as a Sheffield United fan, are you thinking, "Go on, limp off, Brownie. Go on, limp off.
I like
let's have another one."
And you'll hear this when I spoke to Eddie in a little while. They're blaming the ref. The keeper's starfished it with his hands outside the box. Someone's come steaming in from 20 yards and cut someone in half. They're throwing headbutts and punches, and they're blaming the ref. They're down to 7 men. Come on, lads. Take this one.
Yeah, he's lost control.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. They do get a hard time, refs, don't they? Sometimes there's nothing you can do. When you've got Colin on the sideline gearing his players up for a fight, it doesn't bode well, does it?
Let's hear from the man who was at the centre of the storm, I guess, on that day. The referee from the Battle of Bramall Lane. This is what happened when Mark caught up with Eddie Wolstenholme.
Eddie, welcome to the Broken Metatarsal. Thanks for coming on.
No problem at all.
The previous season, Andy Johnson had broke George Santos's jaw when he was playing for Nottingham Forest. Were you aware of that going into this game, and were there any other reasons that you might thought this might be a bit of a feisty one today?
I was aware of that, yes. And after I'd sent the goalie off in 7 minutes, I never thought any more. But when the 2 substitutes come on, and the first tackle by Santos in on Johnson, it was just didn't take me by surprise, because it was such an easy decision, because I've never seen a challenge like it.
It was a bit of a nasty one, wasn't it?
Then when I'm stood at side of McInnes and Sufol come across and headbutted McInnes, I thought, crimes, there's going to be mayhem here, because three substitutes have all been used and there's 3 already off. I actually felt inside it was going to be difficult to try and finish the game, but hopefully I was going to get through it.
Oh, really? That's it. And you actually missed Keith Kerr throwing a punch at Derek McInnes as well, I think.
Thanks very much. I didn't miss it. I cautioned him, actually.
Oh, did you?
I
beg your pardon.
I cautioned Keith Kerr. Yeah. I didn't know he would punch, actually. You've told me something I haven't seen, so I'll have to look at that. But I did caution Keith Kerr for something on McInnes. I should have, who I speak to quite regularly, Michael Brown, I should have actually sent him off for a second yellow card on a pullback on McInnes on the halfway line. And Michael Brown does remind me of it every now and then. But the thing is that I was trying to get the game finished, and hopefully I could get through it, and then he went off injured.
That's interesting that you say that. So when that brawl was going on, that melee was going on, you realise straight away, hang on, this game's in danger, and you were thinking straight away, I don't really want to be sending anyone else off?
It just didn't feel right. The temperature had rose so much after that. And you've got Derek McInnes with a bandage round his head after being headbutted, and you've got Sufo off, and they'd both been Santos, and they'd only both been on the field of play less than a minute when they both got sent off. It was the first challenge he made.
When you say something didn't feel quite right, Eddie, what do you mean by that? Did sabotage?
Well, I'd sent the goalkeeper off after about 9 minutes, handball outside box. Then when them two went, the atmosphere between the players at that moment in time when it was just so bad, I'm just thinking this is going to be tough to get through this and finish it. It just didn't feel right because the animosity, like they had to pull back. About 4 players had told back the centre half, Darren Moore, of West Brom, stop him getting to him.
You did well to keep Big Dave from steaming in there. He's a big fella, old Darren Moore.
Yeah, and about 4 of the players, his own players, grabbed him to stop him getting involved because he was so incensed by what had happened. You just didn't feel, like I said, the atmosphere had just gone up, and it was every challenge. The crowd was up because they were at home, Sheffield United. So I got the famous song that I were a banker, which I'm not. So that was constant. So you just had that feeling something wasn't right.
And Michael Brown has said himself, like you say, he'd been tearing into tackles, thought he was going to be sent off. What did he say when he? I think he did a hernia, and he comes over to you in the middle of the park. What does he say to you? You know, I've got to go off. I can't continue.
He just said he couldn't continue and went off injured.
And what's your thought process at that time? Because you then realising, okay, we're one.
Well, I'm realising there's only one more.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I got problems here, so hopefully just get through it.
Were there any thoughts going through your mind with Michael Brown that he might not be injured that into your head, or do you just have to take him on face value?
I just took it on face value. I didn't even consider that.
And then 3 minutes later, same again. Rob Ullathorne, hamstring, walks off.
Yeah, and I did tell him, I said, if you go off, you do know this game is abandoned. And they said he can't carry on. I said, well, that's it then. So it was 83rd minute, we finished, and I think it's the latest I've got home from Sheffield. I think I arrived home about 10 o'clock. My daughter were a teenager then, and I got home, nobody in the house. And it was like somebody had bombed the place. I couldn't believe what a mess she'd left it. So I was more steaming about that, to be honest, because there was nothing I could do about the other circumstances.
Like you say, it was out of your hands. There was certainly no decisions in there that anyone could possibly have disagreed with. In the immediate aftermath, I mean, did Gary Megson come and speak to you? Did Neil speak to you? I mean, did you realise you were the first referee to abandon a game in these circumstances?
At the time, no, I didn't even notice. I didn't think about it. I have to admit, when I was in the dressing room after the assessor come in, and I nearly drowned myself, because he did tell me while I was in Bath that I'd missed a caution on Michael Brown, and he should have been sent off, and I thought, brilliant. I've just had World War III on me, and I've just been told I've missed a caution, which he did tell me. We laugh about it now, because I know him quite well. And the aftermath after the game, I got a phone call from a newspaper within 10 minutes of the game finished, offering to buy the story on it if I didn't speak to anybody else, which I refused straight away, obviously for other reasons, because I didn't think it was credible to do anything like that. And obviously I wanted to carry on my career as well.
You're waiting for us 20 years on, Eddie.
No, you wouldn't have paid me what they were going to. They offered me.
True.
They offered me money for it, and I said no thanks. And then the phone calls were just non-stop. It was mainly the next 2 or 3 days after, with the press, media. I was getting phone calls at silly hours. That was the interesting. Gary Megson did phone me 3 days after. He was fantastic, saying, "Oh yeah, we know it weren't your fault, this and that."
And you mentioned that the referee assessor was there on the day. Obviously, there was no comeback on you because I believe you refereed Sheffield Wednesday next week.
Yeah, it was quite funny because on the Monday, the fixtures always come out on a Monday, and I got the fixtures on the Monday, and I went to Sheffield Wednesday, Plymouth on a Friday night on a TV game. And it's the first time in my career that I've been out in warm-up and got a standing ovation. I've never had that before. We usually sometimes get a bit of abuse or banter, but you don't often get and it's the first time it's ever happened to me, and I don't think it'll most probably happen to me again after it.
Did it happen at the end of the game though, Eddie?
No. Only at the start. No, I didn't.
There you go, Eddie Wolstenholme at the centre of the Battle of Bramall Lane. Nice chap to talk to, Mark, and like interesting to get his take on what had happened that day from a referee's point of view of just like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Yeah, good interview that, wasn't it?
It was. It was really good. Mate. Do you want to? You can do them all by yourself if you want.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
not a problem.
What I liked about it is how sort of matter of fact about it
Yeah.
he was, and sent him off, and I thought it might have been for a bad game. You know, even though we're talking about it on a podcast 20 years later, it's not. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal for him. It was just another game, and the next game he reffed again, and more annoyed about his daughter messing up a room. I think when he got home, I wasn't in a bad mood till I got home, and then I saw that, and I was bloody fuming. So,
And she finds out he's having an affair. She's having an affair with Colin himself. But just that you can see Warnock doing that as well. Explain to his wife, I had to do it. I had to get one over him.
But they are matter of fact, they just move on to the next game, don't they? Which was that Sheffield Wednesday, of all the games to have the next game and get a sort of standing ovation going in
Funny
there.
that.
You imagine the Wednesday fans were absolutely loving that on that day, weren't they?
Oh, definitely. I loved the fact he said it's the only standing ovation he's ever had. Didn't get it at the end of the game. The atmosphere soon changed after the first booking for their own team. But
my favourite bit of that interview was his description of being in the bath after the game in the referee's room, and the assessor comes in. Firstly, can't the assessor wait till he's out of the bath?
He's not.
I just got an idea from there. Oh, I've had a right stressful game. Drop a bath bomb in, will you? Just nice, a few candles around it, just trying to de-stress.
That's why he stayed so calm.
That's exactly. And the
And
assessor
I'm guessing at some stage he's got Gary Megson
banging on the door.
Ref.
Lads, I just want
Piccadilly Circus
I
round
just
there.
want a bubble bath. That's all. And the assessor's coming in just like, and you've missed a yellow card. But then again, you mentioned to him that he'd missed what should have been a red card in there, didn't he?
Yeah,
So he wasn't massively happy about that either. But yeah, just sort of add insult to injury. Yeah, you missed another one as well. So
So do you get assessed straight after the game as a referee?
I think if the
then?
game was like that, clearly, there's not much
Can we have
time
a chat, Eddie?
It's more just a bit of counselling, I think, for him after that.
Yeah. Oh, it's Graham Paul just smiling at him. Yeah, we're going to have an assessment here, aren't we?
Yeah. So Eddie Wolstenholme and the Battle of Bramall Lane kind of ends that. But in terms of Neil Warnock, one of those characters that's going to be talked about for years after he finishes in football as well. He does all the punditry and stuff, and he's great value. But how would you've got a great story, Rob, but it kind of sums him up pretty well, don't you?
Well, I think he deserves credit for being such an obviously old school manager, and he's still carried on into the modern era. And when he was in charge of Leeds, it wasn't the fondest of times, shall we say. But there is one story which I do just love, and it was a pretty dismal season when he was in charge of Leeds, and we drew Birmingham in the FA Cup third round, so not particularly a glamour tie. They were in the Championship then.
Was for Birmingham.
And we were playing them away from home first, and I think Leeds fans are always very sceptical about the amount of time he spent in Cornwall, and he actually missed this game. And he was managing. He listened to the game on the radio, and that's how he managed the team. And at half time, he made half-time subs after listening to the game on the radio.
Couldn't hear your name mentioned very often.
And
you're making me sick.
And he wrote an independent column about it. And the maddest thing is that the half-time subs worked. Like we were 1-0 down. We were 1-0 down, and we got it back to 1-1 and got a replay, and we won the replay and beat Tottenham in the next round, which is probably like his best day as Leeds manager. But he had an independent column around this time, and I honestly think they should be made into like a collection of columns, because they're such good value, and it's just so Alan Partridge, like the wittering he goes on it. And I've copied this down, and it's a 1,500 word column that he went on about, and he's obviously must have heard the criticism and the suspicions that he was just at home in Cornwall. So he's really playing up how ill he is, and he goes on for ages about how ill he was. As you may have heard, I missed our FA Cup tie against Birmingham City last week because of illness. As far as I can recall, it's the first match I've missed since I was managing Notts County 20 years ago, which shows you how bad I felt. It takes a lot to keep a manager away from his team, but for a few days last week, football was the least of my worries. I was only interested in my health. I'm glad to report I've been back at training this week and will be at Barnsley today, but the fact we've had a couple more lads go down shows the bug isn't out of our camp yet. He continues, you forget how important your good health is until you feel really unwell, and you don't really appreciate how illness takes over until you're suffering yourself. I certainly realise now why a couple of lads had no chance of playing this weekend and why a couple have no chance of being at Oakwell. It was absolutely strength sapping. I know I'm always saying that we men are softies and women would plough on through our illnesses, but I can tell you that this was a lot worse than the usual man flu. Just say you're ill, Neil. It's fine. What are you going on about? And it carries on, and he doesn't just talk about this game. He goes on further, and he talks about Wolves appointing Dean Saunders and what a great appointment that is, which is, I think he might have got that wrong. But even in that, he goes back to talk about how ill he was. Dean's a very funny man. Put him on stage and he'd be up there with Peter Kay and Michael McIntyre, in brackets, whose DVD, a Christmas present from the kids, kept me going while I was bedridden.
Bedridden.
It's just so partridge. And again, after he gets a bit casually xenophobic after this. You need a good sense of humour as a manager, especially at championship level where the bulk of players are British. No disrespect to foreign coaches, but most of them don't understand English dressing rooms. Humour eases pressure and is instrumental in building team spirit. I am convinced it is a core ingredient for a successful manager. Now, bear in mind, he got sacked by Leeds after his own player Ross McCormack celebrated a goal by shouting "fuck off" at him. I don't think that good humour really translated. And again, you carry on, and he talks about the pain of transfer windows and agents always ringing you up. And later that month, Leeds signed a player called Habib Habibou, and you think, really, do you not like the agents here? And he tries to take credit for an old goalkeeper, Matt Duke, playing well at Bradford, even though he admits that he sold him straight away to Burton. It's just absolute classic Warnock. Has a moan at referees, obviously, about calling players by their nicknames. And then again, he ends by talking about how ill he was again. And like I say,
just to recap,
I was very ill, yeah.
He's gone from being ill to being bedridden as well, which is like quite a dramatic sort of stage of ill. Bedridden, but still listening to the radio and making substitutions.
Just admit, Neil, you couldn't be asked.
You couldn't be asked, guys.
No, he sat on the beach in Cornwall, rain sodden. Look at this, bloody fantastic interview down here on South Coast.
He was there watching Bodmin Town, just scouting for the pre-season.
Who was that lad who scored? Crack of that.
Okay, let's finish off today with a bit of football fact or football fiction. Mark, Micky and Rob all have three statements to make. Only one of them is a fact. The other two are totally made up. They are football fiction. Can you and I work out which one is the fact from the fiction? I have a terrible record. My record at this is worse than Neil Warnock's record at Leeds United. So we're going to start today with Micky. What have you got?
Neil Warnock used to help delivery men get big deliveries into clubs he was at because he said he used to be a delivery man in his first contract, 16 to 18, and who knows how it feels.
Oh, so he used to physically... Oh, I see what you mean. I thought you meant he used to make it happen. Yeah, I didn't know what you meant.
Oh, no, he used to get the deliveries in.
Like a contract.
I also thought you meant nightclub when you first started. I was like, what? Okay, so there'd be a big delivery of footballs, for example, in huge boxes, and Neil was like, let me come and give you a hand. I know what it's like. I'm one of you. I'm one of the people. I used to do this for a job as well.
Yeah.
I know what it's like.
Basically.
Okay, Mark?
So Neil Warnock has worked in a lot of different jobs as a football manager. We mentioned he's a qualified referee.
Delivery driver.
Or
not.
Chiropodist.
Shut up. Shut up.
And undertaker. He worked as an undertaker once.
Wait a minute, which part of this is...
It was just finishing off the job.
Hold on a second, which part of this is the statement? Are you saying, is it the chiropodist part?
It's all true.
Or is it the...
It's all true.
So chiropodist and undertaker are other jobs he's had.
Correct.
He was only undertaker once. What happened?
He was the undertaker.
Paul Bearer walking in by his side.
As the soil went on, the fuck off, you're making me sick.
You're making me sick. Neil, he's dead.
He's no fucking use to me now. Yeah. Get him out.
You stink. You're making me sick.
Rob. That one took a really dark turn.
So going back to Warnock's spiritual home of Cornwall, when he was manager of Sheffield United, his giant commute meant that by his own calculations, he once spent over $2,000 a year on coffee and Cornish pasties.
Oh, just on the commute and just eating
on the
way.
service stations. Yeah, it's expensive grubbing it in service stations.
$2,000 a year in expenses. So, Micky, you're saying he used to be a delivery man, so he used to help the delivery men. Rob, you're saying the commute cost over £2,000 just in pasties and coffee.
Yeah, never mind the fuel.
And Mark, you are saying that he was an undertaker and a chiropodist. Sorry, it's just so ridiculous. But the thing is, every time I say Mark's is ridiculous, it ends up being the fact. So now I'm really not quite sure. I just want to just drill down here, Rob, into what you were saying about the actual costs here. Just give me those facts again. He used to travel over how long a period?
Well, he's manager of Sheffield United, however long he was there. For a good few years, wasn't it?
Okay, and he was coming up from Cornwall. How often was he getting the train, would you say?
I wasn't getting the train. He was driving.
Just driving. Okay,
Yeah.
He was saying every time he used to commute up. Mm-hmm. So how many times a week?
I
Did he
mean,
do it on
I
a
don't
daily
want to cast
basis?
aspersions on how hard he was working at Sheffield. But,
Let's say it was 3 times a
yeah,
week.
3 times a week.
Okay.
And you know,
He gets a coffee and a pasty, maybe one pasty and 2 coffees.
or maybe 2 pasties even. I don't
Let's
know.
call
It's
it
a long
a tenner.
journey.
Let's call it a tenner. You're saying £2,000. That's
Yeah.
200 commutes.
Yeah, that's easily done.
But yeah, I think it's not enough money.
Ooh.
I'm discounting you based on
He's
mathematics.
Nice pun as well.
Good, yeah.
Discount. Maybe that's
That's
maybe
why it was
it's
£2
true.
grand. Yeah, yeah.
Because he's probably getting.
He'd be looking
the
for discounts
pasties.
every time, wouldn't he? Every time, like, I'm not getting that. It's
100%.
$3.99.
And he's probably getting them from Cornwall, so it's a local delicacy. They're cheaper
just
down there.
Stop poo-pooing my
And
rationale here.
maybe 3 times a week was been a bit generous. I don't know. I don't know what you're saying.
I have drilled down into your fact with mathematical proof, and I'm discounting you, and that is my right as the decision maker here on Football 5 Football Fiction. Delivery drive between when he was 16 and 18.
Yeah, when his first contract, you did get a load of money, did you? So
What kind of deliveries was he helping bring into the
it just says delivery driver. Don't know.
pasties and coffee?
Discounted pasties. Is that what's that discount? Get him in here.
And Mark, you are saying that he was an undertaker.
I'm doing last minute research here because I know you're going to ask me questions and I have to know the answers. Yeah, it just.
Sorry,
obviously,
why can't you just do your research? Why do you always leave it to that?
It's just more fun, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah, go on. Tell me some research about him being an undertaker.
It's not researching that so much, but obviously, unless you go through the ranks of an academy or whatever, you've got to work. He started out at Chesterfield as a player, and before that he just did a few jobs, and obviously he's a little bit of a quirky character, should we say, Neil. And rather than go and work in the supermarket or whatever, he thought, I'll do something a little bit different. Chiropodist and an undertaker.
Okay, I've already discounted you, Rob, based on the fact that I think he spent more on coffee and pasties. Mark, I'm worried about doing this because you always seem to have the one that's the fact. I'm discounting you just because I don't think he's got the temperament for it. I just can't see him.
What undertaker?
But he's very sort of straight to the point and
you need to be a people person for that. You need to be able to
he's not customer facing. He's not he's behind the scenes. He's doing the barming.
You could just see him come out. So what was he like then? Yeah, he looked like a bit of a dickhead. That's it I could say.
He definitely couldn't have been customer facing. I'm discounting you. I'm going to say that he was a delivery driver, and he thought, I'm going to try and be against all having discussed in great detail about his temperament and how he wasn't necessarily always the nicest person to everyone he came across. I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to say that when it came to the delivery men, he was a nice bloke, and he helped them with the deliveries.
You
Mickey.
could see it happening, couldn't you?
Yeah,
you definitely could. But unfortunately, I just made that up.
Oh no! It
says F here.
for false. I can't believe it's Mark. I can't believe it's going to have to be Rob.
I'm afraid this too is false.
He
was the Undertaker.
That's amazing.
And a chiropodist, that's also true.
Is that actually true?
Yeah.
I don't thought you made that up.
No.
He was an undertaker.
Yeah, I genuinely did try and do some research there, and I can't find what he did, but he worked for an undertaker's.
Well, he worked for an undertaker.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm guessing he wasn't a qualified undertaker. I assume you have to have some qualifications.
Takes years of training.
How do I deal with your, deceased family member? I just fancy giving it a go.
If there is,
just put the body in there, do you? Is that right?
If there is only one thing we take away from this, it is an image of Neil Warnock being basically the Undertaker in WWE and walking into the ring ready for a matchup, even though it wasn't that kind of Undertaker. I can't believe that.
No, unbelievable.
There you go. The amazing things
Life of Neil Warnock.
Life of Neil Warnock. And on that note, this episode was brought to you by our friends at Football Index, the football stock market where you can buy and sell players for real money. Sign up today at footballindex.co.uk. Use the code TBMINDEX to trade with a £500 money-back guarantee. New customers only, 18+, and you can contact us, of course, by emailing contact@planetfootball.com. Mickey, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Rob, Mark, as always, been lovely.
Cheers.
We're all off to Google Neil Warnock Undertaker. And we'll see you next time on the Broken Metatarsal.